basic chart. Now, everything again can be found at your fingertips. Of course, if you have money, then you can subscribe to those paid database such as Bloomberg, DataStream, and so on. But there are also free versions. Even if you look into Bloomberg websites, there are some data there as well. Morningstar, Fund Supermart is very good if you want to look into unit trust data. You can find a historical individual stock price at Yahoo Finance and Google Finance. You can also download some fundamental data from InSage or even Bursa Malaysia website. Now, there are too many indicators. The one that I explained earlier are just very, very basic and popular ones. But as I mentioned earlier, there are too many indicators being used by practitioners. Okay, some of the examples I give there are Bollinger Band, Scan Slim, Chaikin, Fibonacci, Fourier transform, and stochastic escalators. And there are many others actually, such as ADX, Kalman, momentum indicators, OBV, parabolic indicators, RVI, tricks, Williams R. They are too much, isn't it? And for each of the indicators, you can use different combination and different number of days and so on. So there are literally hundreds of indicators. And when you consider this combination, there are actually thousands of trading systems being used. Yeah. And you haven't even considered big data and AI yet. Algorithms, swamp optimizations, and so on. So there are many other combinations and options. Now, when you do investments, obviously you want to also consider your performance, right? You cannot only look into the performance in terms of dollar return, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, if you only compare your salary in terms of you drive or you take some delivery from Foodpanda as compared to if you swim across the river, it is not fair, isn't it? Let's say you get 100 ringgit from swimming, fighting with crocodiles, as compared to just sending McDonald burger by driving or riding a motorcycle. It is not really fair for you to compare 10 ringgit with 100 ringgit and you say, it is much better to swim with crocodile because you can earn 100 ringgit. It is not a fair comparison, isn't it? Because much riskier and you might even lose your life. So because of that, the risk, and you should actually expect higher income from there, and you have to take into account the risk from swimming. I've heard for some of this, yeah, alpha and beta, the very basic one. You have the Sharpe ratio. You compare the expected return with the standard deviation of the return. You have Sortino ratio, omega, value at risk, conditional value at risk, information ratio, and so on. There are many performance measures, yeah, that really show whether your investment strategy is good or not. And like technical analysis, there are lots of performance measures. These are some of the basic ones that I show this. These are only some of the basic ones. Sorry, very bad handwriting. Other things, yeah, such as Sharp Omega, you have Bernardo Ledoux, gain loss ratio. You also have this one is beta. You also have conditional beta. You can have Karma ratio, Black Trainer ratio, M squared. Yeah, M squared is from Modigliani and Modigliani. The one who developed that is actually the grandfather and the granddaughter. Yeah, very interesting. That is why it's called Modigliani and Modigliani or M squared. Now, just imagine you write a journal article with your granddaughter. So there are many performance measurement whenever you want to evaluate your investment performance. So let's say if I do some investment using technical analysis, let's say my performance, I brag, yeah, I say, my performance is actually better than Dr. Zai, for instance. And then Dr. Zai can ask me, is it? And then Dr. Zai can actually show in terms of the Sortino ratio, for instance, her performance is actually better. And we have to, again, in finance, you have to consider both risk and return. You cannot just say your performance is better just because you earn higher profit. So I hope that is clear. So this is just some of the final points. We are at the end of our presentation today. These are very important as well, yeah, these final points. Some of the dangers, yeah, when you want to use technical analysis, people are creatures that like to look at patterns, isn't it? So sometimes we tend to perceive patterns where actually none exist. Another thing that is danger is actually data mining or data snooping bias. Yeah, economists, surely you know this as well. When you have the data and you try to mine using some or whatever models, you might generate some patterns given limited data sets. Another important consideration is whether that rule will be reasonable. You have to also consider the market trend, whether the market is trading or trending, and whether the parameters, yeah, whether it is suitable for you to use 14 days, or maybe you should use 20 days, maybe 30 days. So maybe you have to do some parameter optimization. The data should be from reliable database and of sufficient length. If you want to invest, you cannot just simply look at the past 30 days data and then do some simple moving average and say, this one will give me 1 million ringgit. Okay, it's not sufficient. And then the database should be reliable as well. Don't download from some dodgy websites. Things such as websites such as Yahoo Finance, Morningstars, Bloomberg, and so on are reliable ones. Do not ignore fundamentals. As Dr. Zai also showed earlier, the quarterly report, for example, also have some effect on the prices, isn't it? It shows that investors look at this fundamental information and then they react on this information. And then you can see the patterns from those particular points. For Muslims, of course, don't invest in Carlsberg or um, uh, Berjaya Toto, Genting, and so on, right? Please keep in mind, even though the price or the particular stock can give you good returns, invest in Sharia compliant investments or stocks only. And of course, don't consult um, people who are scammers or selling forex and other stuff. You must consult licensed experts as licensed by Securities Commission Malaysia. Now, about risk management for technical analysis, like I said earlier, you have to put some stop loss and take profit policies. If I can share very briefly, I have a friend recently, a lecturer as well. I don't want to mention his name. He invested in he's the first time he invested. Yeah, he invested. I think about 20 or 30,000 ringgit in the US market. He bought an option. Yeah, this was the first time he invested. He already invest. He began by investing in option, which is a derivative, highly risky. Yeah, and it is in the US market. And he lost, I think, about 18,000 ringgit. You just imagine, the first time trading already lost 18,000 ringgit. So be careful. You have to put some stop loss strategy. You have to um, consult licensed expert, look at the data. Don't just simply invest because you think it can give you lots of money. And of course, the final thing is you have to have a very good money management rule. If you want to invest, don't put all 100% of your money in that particular stock. Make sure, okay, the general and simple rule is, for example, you can put, let's say, only 2% or 3% out of your investment funds. So that way, even if you lose 100% of that particular stock, you only lose about 2% or 3% out of your whole investment fund. Okay. So of course, there are many other advanced rules. This one is the most basic one. You can also consider some trading outcome. You can consider Monte Carlo simulation. And I think economic students, you are familiar with Monte Carlo simulation. Yeah? You can actually use Monte Carlo simulation in order for you to determine this policy. All right. So with that, I end my presentation. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to present. And of course, as we always say, segala yang baik itu of course adalah daripada Allah, dan yang kelemahan itu daripada saya sendiri. So again, Assalamualaikum and thanks.
Majlis merakamkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Profesor Dr. Safwan atas ilmu yang telah disampaikan sebentar tadi. Tanpa membuang masa, majlis diteruskan lagi dengan menjemput dan mempersilakan Dr. Zairihan binti Abdul Halim untuk menerangkan berkenaan free online tools to analyze and practice trading. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya menjemput dan mempersilakan.
Saya try on video kalau slow bagi tahu saya. Terima kasih banyak Dr. Safwan. So the last advice tu memang sangat betul lah, bila kita start trading, maksudnya first time, jangan get emotional dalam market. Mungkin bila you buka platform tu nampak macam berkedip-kedip kan, platform tu hijau merah you macam overwhelmed. Lepas tu tanpa memikirkan risk dia, you terus masuk je, letak duit banyak-banyak and then hangus. So kita kena fikir banyak perkara lah sebelum kita trade tu. Start small tak apa. And then my suggestion would be like Mr. Anwar mentioned, I always encourage students to go to Bursa Marketplace lah. Kita akan tengok sedikit lah. So you boleh manfaatkan free tools yang reliable punya sources untuk you dapatkan maklumat tentang stock dan sebagainya, analyst recommendation. Okay. So I will go quickly. Saya tahu petang-petang memang kita perlu bermujahadah kan. Okay. First thing first is of course Bursa Marketplace lah, sebab dia memang daripada bursa sendiri. Jadi dekat Bursa Marketplace ni kita ada screener, kita ada Bursa Mix, maksudnya middle to small cap . And then dia ada juga free course and learning materials, trading game. Ini yang saya sangat galakkan, dan saya sebenarnya dengan Dr. Safwan dalam rangka untuk maksudnya melaksanakan satu inilah proses untuk kita nak get students get used to trading. Kita akan buat gamification insyaAllah. Later I will create trading game untuk you guys yang join pada hari ini. InsyaAllah you will have the feel to how it feels like to trade. Okay, so saya buka Bursa Marketplace. Dia agak slow sedikit lah, so maybe I should turn off my video kat sini. Okay, so bila you buka Bursa Marketplace, ini yang you akan nampak kan. So saya galakkan semua yang ada kat dalam ni register, buka an account dekat Bursa Marketplace. You akan sentiasa dapat update dekat email ya. And then dia ada screener, saya sebut tadi ada screener. Ni dapat tak screener? Tak nampak doktor. Saya tak nampak Saya reshare ya. Okay, now macam mana? Can you see the page showing now?
Nampak, doktor nampak.
Nampak. Okay, so ini dia punya interface lah kan. Jadi dia ada tools, learn ni dia akan bawa ke page Bursa Academy, and tools kita boleh pergi ke screener. Dia ada stock rating, dia pun ada pakai sistem alpha indicator, and what's trending, dia punya research report dan sebagainya, list of brokers. So kita nak pergi kat sini dulu screener sebab dalam dekat bursa tu ada 900 plus company. Macam ni kita nak filter company yang bagus fundamentally and dia ada momentum dan sebagainya. So kat sini kita boleh gunalah based on yang Mr. Izham sebut tadi tu kan. So kita boleh pick mana PE value, between 10 to 15. The lower PE value is the better. Okay, let's say kita ambil 10 to 15. So share price ini bergantung kepada kita punya modal lah. Kalau kita nak go for cheap punya stock, so kita boleh pilih. Then kalau kita nak stock yang pay consistent dividend ataupun consistent EPS, maksudnya earnings dia bagus over the years, so kita boleh pilih juga kat sini. So kat sekarang ni kita ada about 150 matches. You click show result, dia akan list down semua stock yang ni lah. Dan dia ada juga recommendation, analyst recommendation kat sini. Kita boleh filter kat situ. Ada yang outperform, ada yang dia indicate dan buy lah. Dan boleh juga filter ikut harga, listkan ikut harga yang paling murah sehingga yang paling mahal. Itu Bursa Marketplace. And then another tool yang saya suka tentang Bursa Marketplace ni yang tak ada pada source yang lain lah, yang kita selalu guna tu adalah game. Kadang-kadang kita boleh nampak ada orang lain yang create game. Jadi kita kena register lah. Kita kena register account dan kita boleh nampak segala features kat sini. Contoh, kita nak join game kan. So kita akan nampak. Nanti kalau saya create game, saya akan bagi link. Siapa yang berminat boleh join sebab dia maximum participants, if I'm not mistaken, is about 150. So banyak ni dia orang create game. So yang latest yang ini female versus male macam-macam lah. Ni maksudnya pemilik account masing-masing lah kan, dia create. So kita boleh join, tak ada masalah. So macam mana nak trade, ni maksudnya practice trading menggunakan virtual capital, bukan capital yang betul. Virtual capital dulu, kita nak dapat fee dulu kan. So saya ada join satu trade tadi. Okay. So dia bagi modal kita 5,000, modal tipu lah. So kat sini kita dah boleh start buy and sell. Contoh hari ni yang hot kat market adalah DNEX kan. DNEX. Macam mana saya tahu kata DNEX? Kalau kita buka portfolio, kita akan nampak active trading stocks dekat senarai yang dekat atas kan. So every time you buy, kenapa you beli, you kena it's good practice actually to know why you buy that particular on that day. So hari ni dia actively traded kan. And ada good news. Good news. Apa good newsnya? Ada investor daripada luar negara nak maksudnya acquire some shares of DNEX lah, if I'm not mistaken. So dia punya price sekarang ni, kita boleh klik juga get price. Tapi dia punya ni agak slow sikit lah. So perhaps this one is the latest price lah. Last done price kan. So kat sini 100 quantity. Dia dalam quantity per unit, dia bukan lot kat sini 200. Contoh kita beli 300 unit. Tapi kalau dalam platform